Welcome to Empowered Heart to Heart, where you'll hear messages of hope, conversations that heal, and interviews that empower. Well, hey, this is Dr. Rhonda Simmons, and I am so glad to be with you today. It's an exciting day, and welcome to another edition of Empowered Heart to Heart. You know, I am so glad to be with you as we draw near to the end of 2024. It's been an exciting year. So much has happened. Great things, so many lessons learned, because I believe we can learn and should learn from every experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so here we are, we're in December. It is an exciting time. And here in Texas, believe it or not, everything is still green because it doesn't get too cold until February for the most part. And so it's looking like late spring, early fall here. But you know what? It is a great day to be alive. Hey, I've got a special guest today, so make sure that before I bring her on that you connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, and Instagram. Our handle is TSEFIORG. And also, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, make sure you like, comment, and share this video with your friends. And make sure you subscribe so that you'll be notified every single time that I upload a video, because we've got great things going on over here. Well, I am super excited about our guest today because she is a powerhouse. Yes, she is. Let me tell you, Felicia Ford is the creative force behind Felicia Ford and Company, a strategic firm committed to brands that crave impact and refuse mediocrity. Oh, she is already talking my language. Her experience spans working on multimillion-dollar ventures, collaborating with industry leaders, and driving strategic operations. She built Felicia Ford and Company as a strategic hub for creative leaders, offering the insight and connections needed for forward momentum. I love this. Like I said, she is a powerhouse queen, and so we are in for a treat today. And so, ladies and gentlemen, won't you welcome to the stage Miss Felicia Ford. Hello, Felicia.
Hi, Dr. Rhonda. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have you. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a great interview. And so I love the fact of how you describe yourself, you know, as the creative force and refusing to accept mediocrity. What made you start your company?
Well. I have to say, with that opening statement of refusing mediocrity, I was in different organizations, I had different experiences. And during those experiences, I realized that we could do a little bit better, right? Like we could be better stewards of our gifts and better stewards of how we were serving people. And I also realized that I needed to create a space for myself with my big ideas and my hard and fast, disciplined ways. I wanted to be able to support my own creativity, but also create and support a space for others who were doing the kind of work that I was doing. And so that was the idea. It was, I've always been adventurous and I've always wanted to go to the ends of the earth in the ideas and the work that I've been blessed to have and to do. And so it wasn't a serious thing at first, Dr. Rhonda. Going off on my own, it was like, oh, I can do this. I've done it for other companies. I've made millions for other companies. I've raised, hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars for other companies. So it can't be that hard. And boy, was I wrong. Um,
I understand.
yeah.
Wow, that is phenomenal. You used a word in what you were just saying that caught my ear, and that word was disciplined. And I guess the reason why it caught my attention is because you're a young person, and you typically don't hear millennials use the word discipline. At least I don't. And so I talk to us more about the disciplined life that you're referring to. What did you give up or change? How have you been disciplined?
I'm an old soul. I grew up with, I think I was probably the next oldest person in the house with me growing up was 7 years older than me. I was partially raised by my grandfather. And I spent a lot of time with my aunts and uncles, in addition to both of my parents. And so I've always had an affinity for older people. And then I'd have to say now I'm able to confidently speak to my intellect and say that, you know, I am a bookworm times 10, and having this intelligence forces you to grow up sooner, right? Like I started reading at 2, and I was reading my mom's nursing books at 2 years old, learning about human anatomy at 2 years old. And that experience just opened the door for me to continue this love and appreciation for learning. And it would be, I think, a little counterculture for me to say, oh, I want to go out and just spend my time doing whatever and doing anything. And that's just not who I've ever been. I mean, I had my time in undergrad, I've been an undergrad over 20 years now, but my family was disciplined. Hard work and work ethic was modeled for me. I grew up in a very small town, and we had 2 stoplights by the time I graduated. Mhm.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, but I have to give credit to my family and to my educators in my early years. I had some incredible coaches. I was a cheerleader, but I trained with the football team, well, the football coach, for weightlifting. And so I had these people that I can remember, to this day, and give you names of who taught me, my English teachers, um, in high school, but I took college level English in high school. So Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Simonini were my "this is how you write" disciplinarians. Coach Gill and Coach Starrett were my, training coaches. My parents in, doing my homework and time that I got to play and time that I got to, do what I need to do in the house. My godfather, my godparents, from church. And so those people planted these seeds in me. And I've never gone to a place to work where doing the job was problematic for me. I have this internal drive, this internal competition with myself that's like, oh, can we do this? How quickly can we do this? And how well can we do it? So I can't say that outside of my formative experiences and outside of myself that I have someone on my back saying, is she going to get it done? Because yes, she will.
I'm just chuckling on the inside because you and I have so much in common, Felicia. We are definitely the same way in going after our goals, and we will not be denied. And I love that about you. That is wonderful. But with that fantastic, rare trait, do you find yourself running into burnout a lot? Because you are trying to compete with yourself.
So I've experienced burnout twice in my life. And it was the first time in my mid-20s, I believe. I was transitioning from working with foster youth into I was still working with foster youth, but transitioning into working in higher education. And I remember, Dr. Rhonda, well, first of all, I should not have been doing what I was doing. I had about 6 programs that I was responsible for. Um, and a staff of probably about 35 to 40 people. But I also had a part-time job that I worked Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, midnight to 8 a.m. I had that full-time position working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then I had another part-time job on the weekends. working 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. And one day I got off of the midnight to 8 a.m. shift, and I was supposed to be going home, change my clothes, and go to the 11 a.m. job, which was in marketing. I fell asleep in the car, and I did not make it to my 11 a.m. shift.
Well, I hope you weren't driving.
I was not driving. I was in the driveway. And my roommate was like, "I saw you in the car, and I just thought you were taking a nap." And I was like, "No, it's supposed to be at work." And I was upset with her for not like waking me up. But then I also was upset with myself because I was doing that to myself. But at that time, I thought that's what I needed to do to survive, right? So that was my first experience with burnout. And then the second time around, it came because I stayed somewhere too long. I shouldn't have been in that space too long. God had already told me to move. I didn't trust him that he would cover me financially because I was like, I don't see how this could work out. I don't. It's not making sense to me. And I was just like, I gotta stay, you know. And so he severed a relationship, a friendship, in that workspace. And that is when I finally realized, okay, God, number one, we're not doing this again. Number one. Number two, I trust you like never before. And number three, I never learned to rest, right? Like I was always able to cultivate my curiosity and cultivate this work and exploration. Um, so, you know, some people work hard out of performativeness, and that's never been for me. My work is out of purpose, and out of curiosity. And so, yes, it has led to burnout, but that is no more.
Oh my goodness, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. We'll have to talk off camera because there are so many connections between the two of us. But I am so glad, first of all, that you came through your seasons of burnt out, but being burnt out, it doesn't happen overnight. And getting to that point or getting away from it. I love the fact that you introduced God into the conversation, and how God had to sever some relationships. So the big question I'm sure that many of our listeners want to know is, how did you get out of being burnt out? How did you get over those times in your life? And quite frankly, what did God have to do with it? How did he play a part in your recovery?
Yeah. So the first time I'll never forget. So when I was working those, you know, three jobs, I also was in grad school. Somewhere in those periods, I think I only worked those three jobs for 9 months, which is still too long. Um, but at some point, I was also ministering through music, and so I had rehearsals and concerts and ministry activities and events. And those times for me, you know, I would get lost in worship. I would get lost. Like I would be at rehearsal with my book bag and my laptop writing a paper that was due at 11:59. But anyone who knows the musician's lifestyle knows that we have late nights. And but that didn't matter to me. So being able to rehearse, but we rehearsed and it was actual worship. I was blessed to be surrounded by other musicians and other vocalists, and that particular artist who really did live the life of, his motto back then was worship is everyday life or something like that. And that introduced worship as a lifestyle to me. And even though I'd known Christ, and even though I had again been taught in church, I had not yet had that experience where I understood what it was to worship. And so that sustained me through that first period of burnout. That sustained me through the craziest of experiences that we don't have time to talk about today. But that is how I was able to get through that first phase. And when I transitioned jobs, I had 7 days in between one job to the next. I slept 12 hours a day for 7 days. So, the story of Elijah and Elisha, when the angel knocked him out, woke him up, and was like, eat, go to sleep. He was like, am I dreaming? That was me for 7 days straight. And I just slept and woke up and ate and slept. And God allowed me to go to a place where I didn't have to work as hard and where I didn't have to perform. I went from full time and all the benefits to a part-time gig, and I got a new car. It was just a bunch of things that just did not make sense in the natural. And the space that I was in, I was surrounded by people who took care of me and in ways that I didn't even know I needed. And so that allowed my soul to rest. That allowed me to get out of this survival mentality. And it really helped me see how much I have been doing and how much I have been going and going and going. And so the second time that I burned out, it was different circumstances, but similar in my behavior because I had developed this sense of self reliance. And I still needed to be reminded, you are not the source. You are not the strength. You are not the power. God is. And so he, again, his grace here is, I love you, my child, sit down. And
Yes.
so I came out of that, and I will also say, and this is probably the first time I've ever said this publicly, but I began to experience depression because it wasn't just that I wasn't happy. I was not fulfilled. I was not challenged. I need to be intellectually challenged. I was not challenged. I had this contract. I've been on this contract for about 18 months or so. I was not challenged. I was not fulfilled. The environment sucked all of the life out of me. And what the Lord started to do was to wake me up at 2 a.m. And I'm just like, well, I can't not sleep. I have too much to do. I have too many people that I'm responsible for. So what am I going to do with this? So I think I was experiencing insomnia for about 2 weeks before I said, here comes the discipline. I was like, I can't do this. I need to do something. So my something was, and I started listening to Joel Osteen on Sirius XM at like 3 in the morning. And I was like, okay, that helped me feel better. And then I said, well, I want to go outside because now I'm feeling better. Let me move, let me do things. And so I started getting up, and I wouldn't go out at 4 a.m. because it was too dark, but I lived in a military community. So my neighbors, some of them were DOD employees, some of them worked for NASA. So they would be up in the mornings, and I felt safe being outside at that time in the morning. And so I started walking for 3-4 miles, and even though I was physically exerting energy, that was rest for me. And so I had this morning routine where I spent time with God, I spent time with my neighbors, and I spent time praying and journaling and meditating. And that is how he helped me navigate those 2 periods of my life.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing testimony. Are you still with your morning routine?
Not to that extent. I've since moved. I've had a back injury. Like, there's been some things that have changed, but I still am up in the morning reading, writing, and doing some form of movement, but not my 3 miles.
Okay. That is fantastic. Oh my goodness, what an amazing story. I will share this about our connection. Um, you talked about knowing when it was time to leave and being depressed and all of that. What you don't know is I just left my job as a school principal back in September. Uh, simply because, well, it's not as simple, but I've been in education for like 15 years, and I knew from day one of being a teacher that I wanted to be a principal. That it was just
Mm,
that's just the way it was going to be.
right.
And because my personality is, for some reason, when I step into something, I lead. It just happens naturally, and
Mhm.
and so I knew I was going to be a principal. and for years had a 5-year plan that worked perfectly until it didn't.
Mhm.
And I got to a certain point as an assistant principal, and the plan was only to be an AP for 2 years, and it turned out to be 6. And I left that job. I knew I was burnt out, and I knew if I stayed one more year, I wouldn't live to see the end of that following school year.
Mm.
And so I left that job and took another job. Um, excuse me. But long story short, I got the principal job finally. Um, Actually, this year,
Wow.
literally overnight, I went from not being a principal to being a principal, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is wonderful. This is a blessing, and all of this.
Right.
Way more stress, way
Right.
more stress. And the Lord, long story short, the Lord would not let me go past September the 6th. And I can relate to the depression, I can relate to the exhaustion, I can relate to everything that you said, um,
Mhm.
because burnout is a real thing.
Mhm.
And I did not realize how burnout I was until I left.
Right.
I would say I didn't really fully recover probably until November. I
Mm.
started feeling, more like myself.
Mhm.
Uh, the stress is unbelievable.
It
And,
is.
the bigger thing, the biggest reason why I left being a principal wasn't just that it was uh, intensifying a heart condition that I've been
Mhm.
dealing with, but it was also because I knew I wasn't walking in my purpose.
Mm.
That was no longer the purpose for me. And so the
Right.
longer I stayed, the more depressed I got
Right.
and the more stressed I got. Every little thing, it just, yeah.
Mm.
I mean, and it's an overwhelming job, even if you want to be there.
Right.
It's an
Right.
overwhelming
Right.
job. And and so I can relate to everything that you said about going through burnout and getting to that point and then healing from it step by step. And
Right.
you can't do it without God. And so, but I tell you, there is nothing like walking in your purpose. I tell
Absolutely.
people now, I'm eligible to retire, and depending on the environment I'm in, I tell people I'm a retired school principal, but most of the time I say I'm in full-time purpose,
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so whatever God says that is, that's what I do. I am so excited for you, that you're here in this space doing what you do. Um, and because I can already tell that wherever you are right now is not the end. You have great vision. And so can I ask what's next on the horizon for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I stepped out of that last place, it's been 7 years or so now. And I was a business owner, but I had contracts that I wasn't aligned with. And, you know, it's interesting that we're here right now because last year, typically I take a break from the business between December 9th and January 9th because it just well, I went to Italy one year during Christmas and I saw how they do Christmas and I said, "We need to do Christmas in that way."
Oh,
Um, but
okay.
taking that time to restore, to rest, and to intentionally spend time with God, last year during that time for me in prayer, the question came up for me, "What is God calling you to right now?" Um, and so that's a question that I reflect on pretty often. And sometimes, I'm not trying to answer it. I'm just listening. I'm just sitting with it. And shortly before that question came, I ended a volunteer position with a local school district that I'd been serving for 15 years. And what I realized, Dr. Rhonda, was that my purpose in that place was no longer purposeful. And it was difficult for me to say to them that I am no longer available to help you, knowing that they still needed my help and knowing that I still had the capacity to help. But what I didn't have the capacity for was to be aligned in a space where God has said to me, season's up, time to go. And as I shared, I've learned enough times when he tells me to go, gotta go. So when I left that, so much felt lifted, and I didn't know what was coming and what was going, but my creativity went into overdrive. And so I created a magazine, and people are like, no way. But in 6 days, excuse me, in 6 days, I created a 70-page magazine. And I thought I was going to publish it more often than I've been publishing it, but I just published the latest edition about 16, 17 days ago. And this time I had a team working with me, so it's 100 pages. And it's like, what's next? Well, last weekend, because God has a way of working through me that's accelerated, I have had to recognize that. But I wrote a book on Saturday, um, 217 pages.
I'm
Uh,
sorry, you say that as if you wrote the whole book in one day.
I wrote the whole book in one day.
Okay. Praise God. Hallelujah. All
2
right.
2:38 a.m. until about 3:24 p.m. on Saturday. um that also was birthed out of a situation that didn't have a long timeline, right? So I'm seeing this theme in my life of, oh, I'm learning my lessons, I'm maturing in my personal, professional, in my spiritual maturity. And so God showed me something, and I listened, I spoke up about it, and this person wasn't happy with me setting a boundary. And I have great boundaries, Dr. Rhonda. I haven't always had great boundaries in my youth. I wanted to help everybody. I wanted to give and be everywhere and do all the things. And in burning out, because I was everywhere, being all things to all people and nothing to myself, I've learned to be for myself, right? And so I wrote a book. So there will be a book. There will be,
So,
actually, there's a series of books.
yeah.
I wrote the outline for a book in September. I didn't know where it was going. The
Mhm.
situation that happened most recently, I didn't know it was going to happen, but it did, and it gave me the discernment and direction to write the book on Saturday. And so I'm excited about that. Past that, Dr. Rhonda, there's lots of things always happening with Felicia Ford and Co. Weekly, the podcast airs. We have a grant that is in partnership with the business to offer to purpose-based change makers that is offered quarterly right now. And I'm just, sitting here obedient, and whatever the Lord says, I will do.
Wow. Wow. I knew calling you a powerhouse queen was just the right title for you. You are amazing, Felicia. You are absolutely amazing. And I take it you're working for yourself full time now?
Well, so yes, I have, we talked a little bit about this off air, but that space that opened up for me in 2018 that allowed me to rest and really has valued everything that I am as a creative and everything that I bring to my community. Um, and they have really honored my leadership and my ingenuity and my innovation. And I get to do that as an executive director of a nonprofit where I'm a team of one, but I operate anonymously to serve other nonprofits in this region of the world. And so my team carries out the vision of Felicia Ford and Co. And then I am free to be present, to think and to plan and to create strategies and to support others in the community.
Oh my goodness. That is so phenomenal. So phenomenal. There is nothing like walking in your purpose and knowing that you are right in the center of God's will. It does take discernment. I believe you used that word at one point. It does take discernment to know when the cloud has moved, when it's time to go. Um, oh my goodness. I could talk another 5 or 10 minutes about staying where God was. It just,
Whew.
it just, it is interesting because you know the story of the children of Israel going into Egypt. Uh,
Hmm.
Originally, Egypt was a blessing,
Right.
because it saved their lives. They were
Right.
there because of the famine. Um, but oh my goodness, when it was time to go, it was time to go. It
Time
was
to
no
go.
longer a blessing, and so oh my goodness, we have so much in common. I am
Yeah.
right there with you. What a phenomenal woman you are. I don't want to sound like Maya Angelou, but you really are a phenomenal woman. And
Thank you.
and so, uh, tell us about proximity circle.
Oh, so as I was journeying through all of this, right? My business helps organizations. We create strategies. We've always created growth strategies, and we've pivoted from strategic planning to marketing sales strategies specifically for changemaker brands. But what I would see when working with organizations is people come in, they think they have a problem. That's fine. It's there's a problem. We just need to narrow down like what is the exact problem. Um and it was a surprise to some people in working with us that they come here, we want to make more sales for our business, or we need a sales strategy or a marketing strategy because we need to change our messaging, our branding, or whatever. And they wanted to stay the same as a person, as an individual. You can't grow your business if you don't grow yourself, right? And if you say, I want to grow my business or I want to grow my nonprofit, then you should also expect that you're going to also grow. Okay. And so when I would take, uh, when we would lead people through the programs that we offered or through the strategic planning, some of it was a shock to them. And that would lead to some defiance and some discomfort. And of course, I empathize because I just told you my story. So I've had lots of discomfort. But I wanted to create a tool to help these leaders, if they choose, to prepare themselves for these seasons of growth and for these transitions, and helping them to understand, what do you do with the discomfort? What do you do when someone's sitting there asking you, well, what do you want for your life? And they're like, well, I want my kids to do this, and I want my husband to do this, and I want my business to do this. And then I'm like, right, but what do you want for you? And so it is a self-guided course where the I say client, the student will work with me 2 to 3 times, and we'll sit down, we'll talk about goal setting, and we'll talk about vision, where you really get to create your vision, and then navigate through setting healthy boundaries, identifying what does a collaboration look like. But it's about proximity. So who is around you? Can you grow? Yes, we want to bloom where we're planted, right? Because we know that can happen. But when it's time to move on to that next space, you want to be able to have the tools to identify who is good for you, who's not good for you early on. Is this business collaboration values aligned, vision aligned, or does it just make sense financially? And even then, it can be a little disastrous. So, this course is for the individual who wants to grow and who wants to make sure that where they're growing, they're surrounded by other like minded and like hearted people.
Wow, that sounds so amazing. How do people get in contact with you about the proximity circle?
So Proximity Circle actually has its own website, proximitycircle.com. But to connect with me, FeliciaFordCo.com. I'm very active on Threads. That's my main social media space. But I'm available on all platforms at Friends Call Me Fee. But yes, they can certainly visit proximitycircle.com.
Okay. So I was trying to decide which one to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that would have been nice, right? If I give you one.
No, that is all right. That is all right. So if I have this right, uh, let's see. Hopefully I spelled it right. Proximitycircle.com.
That's correct.
Okay. All righty. What an exciting program. And working with you is just absolutely valuable. I can clearly see that.
Thank
Um,
you.
so, one of my intention words that I absolutely thrive off of is the word empowerment.
Mhm.
And so, what does the word empowerment mean to you as we wrap up our interview today?
Empowerment is centered on the other person, right? It has nothing to do with me and my story, but everything to do with that person and what they need in that moment. It's me meeting someone where they are and truly understanding what they need, identifying if I can give them what they need, and then equipping them with those tools to get them over whatever hump they're currently experiencing.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, you're, uh, for lack of a better term, almost a conduit for empowerment for other people. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
wonderful. Well, Felicia, it has been an incredible time talking with you. I feel like, um, you know, I don't hear people say this much often these days, but I feel like you're a name that we need to remember.
Mm,
We'll see it again. And
amen.
and we'll see you again. I am so excited about this interview. So worth the time, and I appreciate your time in talking with us today. And if you will just hang out just for a minute, I'm going to wrap up the show, and I'll be right back with you. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Rhonda.
Thank you for being here. I told you. Yes, I did. I said at the beginning of the show that I had a powerhouse queen in the house. I told you. And as they say, I ain't never lied. Oh my goodness. What an awesome, incredible woman Felicia Ford is. She's a change maker, she's a creative. She is the person that you will see again, you will hear again. She is the person also who is making things happen behind the scenes. I believe she said in one of her projects that she was describing that she's that anonymous person. She is the person driving the wheel, behind the wheel, and you may not see her, but you feel her effects and you see the work that she does. Well, I tell you, I believe that there's going to come a time when she's going to that God is going to bring her to the forefront. And so we'll get to meet her, Miss Felicia Ford. Don't forget the name. I tell you, she's going to be back. And don't overlook the fact that, people get this idea that success is so hyped up and it's all this. I want all the glory and all the glamour and the glitz and all of that. But they don't understand it takes discipline. Did you hear the word that she used? Discipline. It takes rest. It takes knowing and being discerning of God's presence when it's time to go, when it's time to stay. You've got to know and understand the timing of God. And so don't be confused. Don't get it twisted, by all of the hoopla, as we say. But make sure that you're living a disciplined life, that you are living a life aligned with God's purpose for your life, that you are staying in tune with Him, that you are putting disciplines in place that will keep you grounded, that will keep you rooted to God, journaling, prayer, meditation, movement, all of these things, taking in the word of God, all of these things that will help you stay grounded and connected so that you can be successful. I believe when God called Joshua, he told him to meditate in his law. He said, because when you do that, you'll have great success. You can't have success in the absence of God. I don't care what the world says. Even though you may be rich, you may be powerful, success is not all about the money. It starts with a healthy relationship with Jesus Christ. And I am so glad that Felicia was on our show today to share her journey, to share how she recovered from burnout, how God healed her, how God taught her the lessons that she needed to learn. So the question is, what lessons do you need to learn? God is trying to tell you something, as they said in The Color Purple. So make sure that you're learning the lessons and that you're applying what you're learning to your life every day. This is Dr. Rhonda Simmons, and I'm so glad to have spent this time with you on Empowered Heart to Heart. And until the next time, be blessed, be encouraged, but most of all, be empowered. And I'll see you on the next episode. Hey there. Before you go, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. It was the perfect ending to 2024 and the perfect segue into 2025. I am so excited because here on Empowered Heart to Heart, I'll be starting a new podcast episode series called Burnout Recovery Blueprint from Surviving to Thriving. And it's going to start January 1st. Yes, New Year's Day. So make sure you get the episode so that you can start learning how to recover from burnout. This 5-part series will be playing throughout the month of January. So make sure that you subscribe and that you get the download every week. I'll see you then.